Hello, and thanks for joining us for Session 2 in our UNC Federal Work Study Supervisor Training. Today we're going to be talking about candidate selection, onboarding, and tracking, those processes that you as supervisors will be doing in early August. Today's session is going to cover a few topics. Mostly we're going to be working through the procedures that you will go from reviewing an application through selecting a candidate, hiring them, bringing them on board, and then some of the pieces that you'll need after the initial hiring in terms of time payroll tracking. And we're also going to go over a few reminders and updates, and at the end talk about the one future session we have planned for this year. So stick with us. So we're going to start today by talking about the application review, which is the process where you'll be looking at the submitted materials for the work study students who are interested in your position. To get to those materials, you of course need to start by logging into JobX. The link is there at the top of the screen, or you can simply search for UNC Work Study. Those three words will bring you to our JobX site, which looks a little something like this right now. Once there, you're going to click on this on-campus employer link to get to the resources and links you need. This is the job management section for our on-campus supervisors. You'll notice on the left is a number of resources that will be helpful. We'll refer back to these shortly. But for our purposes right now, we're going to start by going into the job management login to look at your position. In order to reach your personal information, you'll of course need to supply your Onion username and password so that the system can authenticate you and hand over your information to the JobX site. You'll then land at your JobX control panel page, from which you'll select your department on the lower left hand corner. That'll bring you to a screen that looks a little something like this. You'll notice this is the exact same screen we used last time when we were talking about creating a job posting. The difference is now we've already done that posting, we've put it out, and we've had several students apply, as you can see under the app number column. You'll click on this link to move into our job application review page. Now, this page can be divided into three sections. There's a filter section at the top, an action section in the middle, and a view data section at the bottom. Today we're mostly going to be focusing on the view data, although we will bring in that action section at parts of the process. We've blown up the view data section here so that you can get a better view at it. And from this screen there's 5 different items that you might want to try as you are processing through these applications. The first and the most obvious is you might want to view the applicant's data. You can do this in full page mode or preview mode. We'll talk about full page mode first. To do that, you're simply going to click on the link here on the left with the student's name, and that's going to bring up a new window with not only the student's information that they submitted as part of the application, but also your actual job posting so that you can view the posting in relation to the student's information. You might also want to use this screen to view that same data but in a preview mode so that you're on the same page. That's simply done by clicking on the magnifying glass here on the right side of the page, which will open up a pop-up window within the data page. Same information as if you go full screen. The difference is it's a little smaller since it's just a pop-up window, but it still includes all of the student's information, the applicant's information, as well as your posting at the bottom of the screen. In order to view resumes and cover letters, you have a few options. You can of course click the resume link here, which will bring up a pop-up window of the resume. You can click on the student's name to get a full page screen, which will give you links to both the resume and cover letter, or you can use the pop-up preview mode version, which gives you a page a little something like this where you can see the resume and the cover letter and download the files to view them. Once you've had a chance to look over the applicant's data, you might want to flag candidates either for consideration, which is our recommendation, or you can flag them for non-consideration. Either way, however you choose to use that flag, it's the same process. You're simply going to click on the flag in the column and it'll turn yellow and signify that that student has been looked at and you've set them aside for additional action. Once you've had a chance to review some of the applications, you may find that you have candidates who don't quite fit what you need in order to be successful at the position. We'd encourage you to go ahead and let these students know that you won't be moving forward with their application so that they can pursue other jobs within the system. And other work study supervisors would appreciate that, as it will help these students be directed towards the open positions that are currently needing students to fill them. So to remove candidates from consideration, which again we request that you do if you know somebody's not on your hiring list, you might think to use this delete column Please don't do that. That's actually going to delete the student's application. The next time they log in the system, they'll simply see that the application to your job is not there, and oftentimes students will go back in and reapply to the same job with the same information. So you'll spend time reviewing the application a second or third time, and the student gets a little frustrated with the process as they think their applications simply aren't being saved. So instead of trying to delete the application, we're going to use our action bar, and we'd ask that you check the box next to the student's name, and then click on this Reject Applicants option in the action bar. That's going to open up a new window where you'll have some pre-populated data. This will be sent to the student in the form of an email. Both the subject and the body will be pre-populated for you. We'd strongly encourage you to customize these as you feel appropriate. We do recommend using the phrases, thank you for your application. Unfortunately, we've decided not to move forward with your application at this time, as we've identified other candidates who more closely match our needs. Of course, you can feel free to make that phrase your own, but if you can encourage the student to keep applying to other jobs and let them know that you are not going to be moving forward with their application. The candidates appreciate it, we appreciate it, your other work study supervisors appreciate it. Once you've updated that information, go ahead and click on the Send button in the lower left corner, and that'll prompt the email to be sent out of JobX and to the student's listed email address. So once you've gone through the applications, ruled out students who you aren't interested in moving forward with, you'll have a few that you'll want to interview. And JobX does have some built-in functionality in terms of communicating with those students whom you'd like to interview. And we're going to run through that process right now. You'll notice it's very similar to what we just went through with rejecting students, removing them from the interview and application process. Of course, we're going to use our action bar. We're going to find the student we're interested in, check the box, and then we're going to use this send greeting functionality to send them a message through email. Again, very similar setup here. It'll be an automated email with pre-populated information in the subject line and body. Please feel free to update these, make it your own. We do recommend in the body providing some additional potential interview times, a way for the student to contact you, generally anything that will help set up the interview process that you're trying to accomplish. And of course, once you've finished updating these fields, you'll want to click the Send button to dispatch that email through the JobX system. The interview process for the Federal Work Study program at UNC is very open form. We do allow supervisors a great deal of levity in how they pursue the interviews in terms of formats and questions. But we do ask that you interview a student so that you can assess them beyond just what's been provided on the application. Interviews are a great opportunity for you as the supervisor to learn more about the candidate and assess if they're a good fit. It gives the student an opportunity to speak to you as a supervisor and get a better understanding of the job. And it gives both parties a chance to ask questions and learn more about one another, see if indeed the candidate and the position are a good fit. Now, we do require any student who's new to the position or any returners who are moving to a new position, doing things that they didn't do before, to go through the interview process. We don't require students who are returning to the same position and accomplishing the same task to go through an interview, but we do allow supervisors to process those interviews if they choose to do so. So again, new hires, new jobs with old hires, an interview is required. A returning student going back to the same job, you don't have to interview them, but you're welcome to do so. And in terms of formats, we're not really restrictive. You can do it in person, over the phone, internet, FaceTime. If you can tie two cans together with a string or send a carrier pigeon smoke signals, we're happy to allow any of those formats. We just want to make sure that you and the student have an opportunity to sit down and talk and make sure that the position is a good fit for both parties. We do have some tools to help you with the interview process out on the Supervisor Resources site in JobX. This is the same screen where we logged in earlier to see the interview positions. And down the left, you'll notice that we have three guides here. There's an interview development guide, which helps you turn your job description into a set of interview questions and make that a cohesive assessment tool. We have a page of interview do's and don'ts about topics that you can't ask about during an interview. We do strongly ask that you as supervisors take a look through these before conducting interviews. And then the third tool we have is this comparison and scoring guide, so that you can take that well-written, well-done interview and apply a scoring methodology which is fair to all applicants and will easily produce an outcome to show you who really is the best applicant on your list that you've interviewed. Now, the short version of the interview process is this. You create an interview by taking your job posting and extracting it down to a few key characteristics that you're then going to measure for. You develop questions about each of those characteristics. You put them in an order. You refine them. and that is the set of questions that you'll do. Then you want to develop an evaluation system so that when you ask those questions, you determine how well a candidate did through determining both the importance of each category and how do you score them. And then you're actually going to sit down with the student, go through the interview questions, score each question. And then at the end of that, you're going to take your scoring system and the candidate's responses. You're going to calculate a final value for that candidate and compare it with other candidates to determine who really was the best applicant. Now, we've said all that in words, but let's look at it in a slightly different form to help concrete this example. So we're going to take our job posting and distill out all the duties, the knowledge, skills, abilities, the other factors into a handful of characteristics. We're then going to take those characteristics and group them together and develop a series of questions from those. You might have multiple characteristics combining into one question, characteristics being multiple questions on their own, whatever you think is the best tool. Once you've got your questions, you're going to review them to make sure that they're in the right format. You're going to check to make sure that they're not over restricted topics, improve them, and then structure them by putting them in an order. If you need assistance with this, that aforementioned earlier guide will help you not only determine what your characteristics are, but how to write good questions. For example, did you know that the best indicator of future performance is past performance? So we'll help you structure the questions in a way that will determine what the student did in the past rather than hypothetically what they do in the future. Right? All that's in the guide. Encourage you to look at it. But either way, as you go through, you'll turn those characteristics into questions, put them in an order, and then that's going to be your setup. Now, we also need to determine an evaluation system from that setup of interview. So you'll look at your characteristics and you'll determine how important each one of those factors is. Maybe you've got 3 characteristics they need to be successful. Maybe they're all the same weight, maybe they're different weights. Maybe you've got, for example, here 7, and each one of them is a little bit different in terms of importance. Either way, we recommend that you figure out a system in order to determine how important those skills are, or those characteristics are in relation to one another. Percentages are what we recommend. They're easy to understand, they're easy to set up. So that's going to determine how important each characteristic is, and then you're going to determine a scoring system, maybe 1 to 5, 1 to 3, 1 to 10, 1 to 100, whatever works for you. Our recommendation at the Work Study program is just to use the 1 to 5 scale, 3 being neutral, 1 being the worst possible, 5 being the best possible to assess these questions. So you've got an assessment scale, you've got your questions, you've got your importance. You're simply going to go through those questions with the student and give them a score on each characteristics, somewhere between 1 and 5 for our example here, 5 being the best, 1 being the worst. We're going to take each of those scores, we're going to multiply it by the importance or the weight of each characteristic, and we're going to get a score for each characteristic or a section score. Adding those together, we get a final score for a candidate, in this case 2.91 out of 5 because our score was on a 1 to 5 scale. And we're going to compare that score with the scores of the other candidates we interviewed to determine who's our best applicant, and then we can actually even rank our additional applicants to determine, say for example, if you're hiring 2 positions out of these 4 interviews, well, we know who our best 2 were. It's an easy system. It's a way to compare students unambiguously and clearly and according to the same criteria. So we highly recommend using this system, and again, we've developed a series of resources for you to help set up the system for your customized position. Once you've gone through that process and you know who you want to hire, of course we'll be moving on to the hiring phase. So hiring at UNC is a pretty standard protocol. We do recommend that you call the student to extend the job offer to get an immediate response, and then follow up with a written offer including a series of items which we've recommended below. If you want to use a pre-designed form, we have something out there on the FWS Supervisor Resources site that you can use. Of course, you'll want to customize it for the position, but it does contain all these fields in a format that you can send to the student. They will send that information back to you with a written confirmation that they are going to take the position. Once you have that reply, you can begin hiring students in FWS, as well as, if this is your last vacancy, letting any additional applicants know that you've filled all your positions and you'll be releasing them. Again, this is a courtesy to the student to let them know that they can focus on other positions, and it's a courtesy to your fellow work study supervisors to help the students maybe look for those positions that are still open and help those supervisors fill those roles. To hire a student in FWS, we're going to return to our candidate screen that we were reviewing earlier, and we're going to go and use this hire column on the right to start the process. Simply click on that hyperlink. That's going to take you to this page, which has a lot of great information that I suggest you stop by before you actually move on to the hiring procedure. It's going to tell you the name of the position. In case you have multiple positions, it's good to check and make sure you're working on the right one. It'll tell you how many current openings you have in case you want to hire multiple students at this point. And this information link would actually give you a step-by-step guide on how to go through this procedure. Additionally, on the screen you can see it has listed the other students that you've already hired for this position, so you don't try and accidentally hire someone twice or get confused about thinking, for example, that this Jocelyn and you have another Jocelyn applicant might be the same person. So you're going to start by checking the box next to the student or students that you want to hire. And then you're going to simply click on this link here to go to step 2. Now, a quick word, there is a functionality here that lets you hire candidates who didn't apply online. We really ask that you do not utilize that option. Quite frankly, if you use that option, there's a high potential that the system may not accurately check to see if the student has the correct work study award. So you could wind up trying to hire a student who isn't in fact eligible for work studies funding, and then that student's wages are all going to have to come out of departmental funding sources. So we strongly recommend that you utilize only the hiring online applicants, and that any student you wish to hire, ask them to fill out an application. So once you've clicked the button on the previous page, you're going to move into this step 2, which is the hiring info. You'll notice that the PID and name on here are auto-populated through the system. All you have to really do is click this check student button, and it's going to check the student and validate that they have a work study award. That's going to come through one of two results. You can see here this is the one we don't want, in which we try and validate a student who does not have a work study award. Students, in order to submit an application, have to have a work study award, so this should be pro forma unless that student has had additional resources come in and we've had to decrease or remove their work study award because they didn't disclose that outside award would be coming into us. In most cases, you put in the information, you check the student's box, and you get a screen that looks like this saying, yes, they're cleared for work study, they're validated, they can be hired, and you're going to click that continue button at the bottom of the screen to move on. That's going to move you into this screen, which I cannot overstress the importance of this. This is the actual functional hiring screen. This is where the information gets entered into the system that we report out on, and unfortunately it isn't something you can edit. So please, please, please make sure you're taking the time to fill out this screen accurately and doing it right the first time. You'll notice a few fields on here. Of course, there's the student's personal information, name, ID, email address that we've got from the last period. You'll also see that there is a wage functionality in here, and this is the official wages that we report out on, so we do need it to be accurate. If you need help determining what the student's wage should be, back out on the Supervisor Resources site, we have a wage level determination guide, which will take you step by step through how to figure that out. Now, you will have already selected a pay level when completing the job posting. At this point, you're actually going to determine what the student's wage is within that wage level. Keep in mind, for new students, the top 20% of any wage level cannot be utilized. That top 20% in each level is really only for returning students in the same position. If you need help calculating that, it is in the wage level determination guide. You can simply click on there and scroll down to the next to last page. It's a lovely little blue chart. We'll give you those numbers. So, bottom line here is, you're going to enter the student's wages here. If you need help, there's the resources, but we would encourage you to please take your time and be accurate with the wages. The hours per week, as best you can determine. We know there's some variability, we know things change, but try and make sure this information is as accurate as you can get it. Verify the start date and the end date. These should be pre-populated for you. 8/22/17 is the first day the students begin working, and May, I believe 10th, is the last day the students will be working for the year. We will notify you about both those dates as they get closer, but make sure that those values are populated. Otherwise, the student may not be hired in JobX even though you complete this process. We'd also ask that you fill out whether the student is a hire or a rehire. Again, a hire is a new student who's never done that position before. A rehire is a student who is returning to your lab and either worked exactly that position or a similar position in the past. If they're taking on new duties, new responsibilities, that's a new hire. Once you've filled out all those fields, you're going to click the Submit Request button here, and that's going to bring up this email hire approval. That's just an email. It's a pre-form populated that's going to go out to both my team in the work study office, and we ask that you send it out to your departmental human resources officer by putting their information, their email address, in the field below. This is extremely important because until students meet with your HR officer to complete employment verification through the I-9 form, tax withholding for federal state governments, and the direct deposit form, they can't officially be approved to begin working. So we'd ask that you take your time, go through the body of this text and update anything that needs to be there, add your HR officer's email, and then go ahead and click this email hire approval to send that information on. One word of warning. If a student is hired in Connect, Carolina, which will be done by your HR officer once they receive this notification, but they're not hired in JobX, that student is not eligible to be paid through the work study program. So if we find cases like that, we do have to go back and ask your department to cover those wages. We really don't want to do that. We'd like for the students to get paid through the work study program. That's why it's there after all. But in order to stay within regulatory compliance, if you hire a student in Connect, Carolina without hiring them first in JobX, I'm sorry, but we will be reaching out to you to collect that funding. So do yourself a favor. Make sure you go through this process before you move forward. Make sure the student's hired in JobX so everything will be great with the work study program. Of course, once you've hired candidates, if you've filled all your vacancies, we do need to release candidates who you won't be hiring. I know we've looked at this process before. We're going to go through it briefly here again. Again, this is a courtesy to the student and your work study supervisor fellows so that that student can look for employment elsewhere. Right, to release the candidate, again, we don't want to use this delete column. That just deletes the application. We do want to be using our action bar by clicking on the checkbox next to the student or students. Again, you can do multiple. Those students' names, and then you're going to click this Reject Applicant button. That moves us into this email setup screen wherein the subject and body are already populated, but you can update that information. Again, our recommended phrase, which we recommend you use. It's up to you. Thank you for your interest. We've identified other candidates who more closely match our needs. We will not be moving forward with you at this time. Once you've updated that position, click the send button, and that'll let the student know that they won't be hired for your position. Then we're going to move into onboarding. So you've hired your students, and now you need to get them trained, set up with payroll, ready to go, and working in your office. So onboarding is the process by which you take somebody who is new to the position and get them ready to go, have them start working, prepared to begin their job, as you will. It's 3 steps here at UNC. There's a work study training component, a meeting with human resources, and a meeting with yourself, the supervisor, to go through some basic training. Work study training is 2 components, all of which is out there on our Sakai site. You can see the direct address there, or you can log into Sakai and search for Federal Work Study Student Training. We do ask that you make sure that students hand you the 2 items below, which is a training certificate form agreeing to the rules and regulations of the program and stipulating that the student will follow them, and item 2, a copy of their quiz showing that they did in fact get a 10 out of 10, which is our required score. Again, everything's out on Sakai. We do ask that students provide these to you before they start training, and we do recommend that students actually review this information before they even begin the application process. That may or may not happen. You as supervisors, we do ask that you collect this information. This is new this year for those of you who are returning. We appreciate your assistance in helping ensure the students are aware of the regulations and are staying within our program requirements. So students, of course, will need to meet with human resources before they can begin work. They're going to do 4 things: an I-9 verification to ensure that they are federally able to work with us, payroll withholding for the federal government, payroll withholding for the state government, and direct deposit enrollment so that the students can get paid. That last one being especially important because the students do want to get paid, and if they don't see their wages, they're going to be coming to use the primary supervisor for help with that. We recommend that you set up the appointment with the HR supervisor, either sending the student and the HR officer an email at the same time to help them connect, or checking in with your HR officer before the student begins work just to make sure all these things are completed. Also, when you go to hire the student, if you can let them know that for I-9 verification, they'll need to provide a driver's license and social security card or passport or any of a number of other acceptable documents, just so they know to bring those documents with them from home. You don't want to hire a student, have them show up, and unfortunately they have to wait a month to get some documentation from home before they can start working because they didn't bring them with them. So letting them know about this when they're hired is an excellent piece of information to share. We do share that information with them both in the email they receive August 1 and in the work study training but it's always good to remind them at the hiring point because they get very excited. The third piece of onboarding is the supervisor training, in which the student will actually sit down and meet with you, the supervisor. There's two components to this. The first one is the university required training, which starts with the TIM or Chronos training, so the students know how to fill out their timesheets. That should be the very first thing you do with them day one, and they can be paid for that time. And then the second thing you'll want to do is run them through any safety or hazard training required of your office environment. We need the students to be safe, and of course we need to stay within university regulations. So if there are any hazardous or safety trainings required for the position, it's a good thing to go ahead and get those out of the way at the very beginning. The second component to the supervisor training is really the specifics for you, the supervisor. We've got a few items here: touring the workplace, meeting the coworkers, talking about the equipment, discussing your expectations of them. All of these are great, and of course there's tons of other items that you might want to discuss with a new employee based on your specific situation. We have a hiring and onboarding checklist that we set up on our supervisor resources page here. It's a great place to start. Please feel free to download that and customize it. Use it to make sure that students have completed all the steps they need to in order to work at the position, and use it as a tool for yourself to make sure that you're getting everything done on time. Again, you don't have to use it, but we encourage you to do so. Once the student's hired and begins working, you'll need to start tracking their time and payroll. So time tracking is important for a number of reasons, which you can read here, but the bottom line is, in order to stay within regulatory compliance and to make sure that the students are successful in their academic as well as their professional pursuits, we have to limit the number of hours that the student is working. In order to do that, there's a lot of options you can use. Using TIM and certifying that information as part of the payroll process is, of course, the most common, but of course you can use a tracking system you devise, pen and paper, email, or the centralized time tracker that our office has developed, which of course is out on our supervisor resources site. It's the bottom link of the page, you can see right there. And it looks a little bit like this. There's on page tab 1, there's a calendar with information for a start time and stop time for every day of the year that the student can possibly work. And that information gets fed into tab 2. Now, as students sign in and out on these spreadsheets, the system will automatically calculate how many hours that student has worked within the payroll period, so that you can limit it to the 20 hours a week or 40 hours per pay period that students can legally work. In addition to tracking the student's time, you'll also need to track their payroll to ensure that the student doesn't earn more in wages than they've been allotted through the work-study program. For those of you who attended or reviewed the first session, A, thank you for doing so, but B, you already know this fact. Last year we had a large number of program issues where we had students exceed their work-study issues. Quite frankly, those can cost us $12,000 each time a student exceeds their awards, and that's funding that we don't have. We use every cent that we receive through the work-study program to support student wages, and frankly we can't afford those audit findings. So we rely on you as supervisors to ensure the students are working within their limitations, both in terms of the 20 hours per week and in terms of their overall earnings. So we really need your assistance with that, and we very much appreciate your help in doing so. Again, there's a few tools that you can use in order for tracking payroll. Pen and paper, you can use your spreadsheets, you can wait on the communications that we send you when a student gets close to their award. We do notify you within when the student is within $550, and we notify you what their earnings are in January. But the method we prefer to use, it's very simple, it's very effective, is this tracking tool. It's the next to last link on the supervisor resources site. We call it the time record log. And it essentially looks like this. It's a one-page spreadsheet where you'll enter the student's allotment at the beginning of the year, which you can get through the hiring process or ask the student for. The student's hourly rate, which you determine as part of the hiring process, and it will calculate how many hours that student is eligible to work over the course of the academic year. You can, of course, plan this out ahead of time by pay period to ensure that the student stays within that limitation, which we would encourage you to sit down with a student to do. But realistically, because schedules don't always get met exactly, we would strongly recommend that each pay period you update this spreadsheet so that as hours are reported, you can see how many hours are left for the student. And as the pay periods roll on and you put in more data, you can see that the hours are tracked, and you can determine exactly how much more work the student can do with you before the end of the year. Alright, reminders and update. We have just a few for those of you who are viewing this presentation as of July 26th. Let's take a look at them. The first one is, there was part of the discussion during the first presentation where we showed you how to remove questions about the student's prior work experience, supervisor, context. We did intend to allow supervisors to remove those questions from the application form. Unfortunately, an update through the JobX system made those questions mandatory. We've worked with JobX to rectify that, and you can now remove those questions if you choose to do so. A word of caution: if you're trying to remove or change the application or job posting after students have already applied to the position, you may lose those applications. So we strongly recommend that if you're going to do this, you do it before August 1st when students are able to apply. So in order to accomplish this, we're going to use the edit function on the right side from our control page, which lets you edit the application as opposed to the job description. Again, please note that if you make these updates, it's going to start the approval process over, and you may lose all the applications that you've received up to that point. So if you're interested in the process, you're going to click on the icon on the right, which will take you to the next page, which looks a little something like this. It was step 9 from posting a job application in our prior presentation. In the prior work/volunteer experience, you'll use the icons on the right. Looks a little bit like this when the menu opens, and you can see down at the bottom there is a button to remove the question from application. Simply click on that and the question goes away. Now, you'll note the resume and cover letter will be required. They're going to remain on every application, but the rest of the fields in that prior work/volunteer experience box, those are removable. When you're done, click the Save Application button to save your updated application information, and the system will automatically send that through for approval. Next update is, as of today's presentation, we had 850 distinct positions, each one of those positions with somewhere between 1 and 35 different openings, several thousand job applications, several thousand students can work because of all those positions. So we thank you so much for your participation in the program and making that possible. As of now, we have 4,939 students who can participate in the program and have a work study award, which is an increase of about 900 students over last year. Right now, we have more than enough room for every one of those students. We'll see how the system actually pans out, but we anticipate filling about 94% of our openings right now. So excellent statistics for this year. A few key reminders to talk to at this point. Students will gain access to the system on August 1st. They'll begin applying at that time. We do ask that you as supervisors wait until at least August 2nd to begin your review, interview, and hiring phase. This is simply to make sure that every student who wants to apply for a job has an opportunity to do so before the hiring phase commences. As we talked about earlier, we do ask that you make sure that you hire the student through JobX before you begin updating the hiring action in Connect Carolina, simply because until the JobX process is complete, work study has not been validated, and that student cannot be guaranteed to be eligible for hiring. If the student is hired and paid before the JobX process is completed, unfortunately, those funds have to come from a departmental source, and we will be reaching out to you about that bill. So please, 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 make sure you hire the student in JobX before you move to Connect Carolina. Also, as we discussed this year, we are requiring students to complete a training certification quiz and fill out a certification form to ensure that they are aware of and intend to comply with the rules and regulations of the work study program. If you then need access to that information, it is on Sakai, which you can find by simply searching for Federal Work Study Student Training. 2 components that you'll need to collect for each student: a test score showing that the student got a 10 out of 10 on the quiz, and a certification page where the student agrees to abide by program rules and regulations. Again, please make sure you collect these before the students begin work. Our last little surprise for you here is, in an attempt to help supervisors find positions and students find good fits, we are going to be doing a couple new initiatives called our Featured Jobs program. The easiest and most visible piece about this is on the student search page in JobX. We're actually going to be listing up to 3 jobs at any one time called Featured Jobs. These are going to be rotated on a regular basis, and if you'd like your position to be included, simply send an email to work-study@unc.edu with a brief explanation of what you would like posted and why you think we should feature your job. We'll be happy to make sure that we feature that job at some point during the academic year if you have openings. We're also going to open up our physical work study desk. If you have materials that you'd like to distribute, or buttons, brochures, pamphlets, something to get students interested and excited about your department, your position, we're more than happy to take those, display them at our desk, and students can pick them up when they drop by looking for help. Okay, that's all we've got for this session. We are planning one more training in September. Unfortunately, we don't have a date yet. I'm sorry, we can't reserve a space until after September 7th, and until we're able to do that, we don't have a concrete location and time. But I can concretely tell you what we will be talking about, which is a further look at our over-earning prevention workshop, as it's our #1 audit risk. We're going to be talking more about training and development, and we're going to be going over how to evaluate students and provide feedback. Again, all of these pieces in terms of training, development, evaluation, and feedback are intended to help you develop your work-study students into higher quality, more professional workers, which is great for the students. It helps them develop higher level skills, builds up their resume, and it helps you as the supervisor because those students can take on higher level tasks, they can be more independent, and they can do more for you, which frees up more of your time to work on other pursuits. So we hope to see you in September. We will be sending out a message to the listserv once we have additional information on a time and location. All right, that's all we've got for this time. Thank you so much for sticking with us, and thank you for being a part of the Federal Work Study program here at UNC. We could not do this without you supervisors, so we very, very much appreciate you. We look forward to working with you, and as always, if you have any suggestions for how we can improve our program, new tools, new trainings, new resources, we'd strongly encourage you to reach out to the team at work-study@unc.edu. We're always looking for new ideas on how to improve our program. Thank you so much. Have a great day, have a great year, and thanks again for being part of our program.